didn't see you sneak in.
Good evening. One guy from the front, one guy from the back.
He's got that beard back there and his voice dropped. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
exactly.
What happened.
He's going to be a man before you know it. His voice is almost as low as Ryan's. What? What?
Well, the wife has scooted farther away from him, so
Yes.
she's not sure what's going on either.
She can. 1 Samuel chapter 27.
Oh, the raucous ride of chapter 27.
Yeah. It's a great uplifting message tonight. Can't wait to get into it. I'm actually going to grab the first two verses of chapter 28 as well. It's an odd chapter break where they put that. Doesn't make any sense to me. So the summary, David has decided that he would never truly be safe from Saul. David had decided that he would never be truly safe from Saul. So he flees to Gath. That might jog your memory. We've seen him do that before. And he goes with his 2 wives and his 600 men and their families, and they go to Achish, the king there, this Philistine king. Somebody tells Saul about it, so he actually does stop chasing after David, which is what David was hoping would happen. He spends some time there with Achish and says, hey, why should I be here in the royal city with you? Apparently they become quite chummy all of a sudden, somehow. Not exactly sure how this all happened, because he was a madman last time he was there. So I can't wait to get to heaven and ask how this played out. You know,
He brought a small army with him.
He did, but still. So he says, "Hey, give me a place, out in the country somewhere where we can hang out and be out of your way." And so he actually gives him a town, the town of Ziklag, which is at 20, 30 miles away from Gath, where they were. So David and his men, they go out and they raid the Geshurites and the Girzites and the Amalekites. They kill all the men and women, take all of their stuff, their animals and their clothes, and they go back and present it to Achish, because that's what a servant does for his master in this kind of society. And so Achish asks him what towns he's been raiding, what villages he's been pillaging, and he lies and says that he's actually attacking his own people, villages in Judea tied to the Israelites. And so that's fine with Achish. That makes him think that David is loyal to him, and at the moment it appears that he is. And you move over into chapter 28, then the Philistines gather together to fight Israel. Achish tells David that he would most definitely be part of the attack force. David pretends, I put that he pretends to be on board. I don't really know where he is at the moment. He didn't balk at the idea of being on the attack force against Israel. And Achish says that because of that, he will have a place of honor there forever. So, good for David. He is excelling in the Philistine system and becoming a trusted servant of the Philistine king. Good for you, David. Main theme. What do you think? Okay. I'll go with that. Anybody else? Absolutely. This is a perfect example of that. What do you have, Mike?
Lies only dig deeper holes.
Taking your eyes off God and forgetting His promises leads down a dark road, but God can still use the lost.
Yep. Okay, I think that about covers that. How many sections do you guys get? If you go all the way into those first 2 verses of chapter 28, which you may not have been thinking about.
We'll buy +1. Oh, you got 5, including the chapter 28?
Did you?
Yeah, I did 4, but if you go into the other 2 verses,
Okay.
Good.
Okay. I got 5.
I got 5.
Okay. Do you have 1 through 4?
No.
All right. What do you have?
So you're still wrong.
Okay. Go back to Michigan.
I just did 1 by itself.
Yeah.
What?
I did that too, actually.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, same thing I did.
Okay.
2 through 4, 5 through 7, 8 through 12. And then if it had been 5, it would have been 1 and 2.
Okay. What'd you have?
I had 1, and then 2 through 4, 5 through 7, 8 through 12, and 1 and 2.
Okay.
I think that matches up perfectly, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you did good.
Y'all were so close. So close. I've got 1 through 4, David flees. 5 through 7, David moves. 8 through 9, David raids. 10 through 11, David lies. And 12 through 2, David dupes. But I'm not sure he was actually duping anybody.
You get a B minus.
So, yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. This is a short enough chapter. We're actually going to look at the whole thing tonight. So let's look at the first section, 1 through 4. Okay. And then we'll talk about that. We'll just talk about each section as it comes up. So, 1 Samuel 27, 1, and David said in his heart, now I shall perish someday by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape to the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me to seek me any more in any part of Israel, so I shall escape out of his hand. Then David arose and went over with 600 men who were with him to Achish the son of Maoch of Gath. So David dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, each man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam and the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's widow. And it was told Saul that David fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. So, what do you guys see going on there?
David's making his own decisions. He didn't even ask God where he should be doing.
Absolutely. Listen, God doesn't show up anywhere in this chapter.
He wasn't really fleeing Saul, he was fleeing God.
He was. Yeah.
I just didn't realize that's what he was doing.
Which is always the case. When we take matters into our own hands to try and solve our own situation, we're looking at it wrong. We're not trying to solve our own situation. We're fleeing from God. That is sin. We have to start looking at those things as sin.
Man, we've got it covered. We know better than God. We don't need to bother you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the sad part, the really sad part is this comes again right after Saul comes after him and God saves him. It's not a problem. You know, it's kind of gut-wrenching, really. You know? But I've seen myself do the same thing. You know, God just has to teach the lesson over and over and over. There's no prayer. There's no word from the Lord that we're aware of. He's just thinking.
He has a heart-to-heart with himself.
He does. He does. He says, come on, my soul, let's get to Gath.
He seems to have convinced himself that Saul's going to kill him.
Yeah,
And
which
he's
is
already been
amazing.
anointed.
It's amazing. This blows my mind today when I'm talking to people who are afraid of some massive failure, the impending doom in their life. I'm like, okay, well, let's look back at past instances of your life. How did you kind of ran into this before? How did it work out? Well, it worked out okay then, but I just don't think it's going to this time. And so they want to do something different. Man, stick with what works. You know, the parallelism of him running to Gath again blows my mind. You know, how did that turn out last time?
Horrible.
He had to pretend to be insane to not be thrown in prison or killed there then.
I mean, I thought, I had to read it several times, wait, what?
Yeah,
Like, why? Why?
Am I in the wrong chapter?
Seriously,
But.
I mean, it's a classic, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's silly for somebody who is the anointed of the Lord.
Silly for a believer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. James?
Well, in his defense, he's obviously away from God, so he's making bad decisions anyway.
Yeah.
And he does a cowardly thing, and I hate to say that about David, but he does a cowardly thing and leaves.
Yeah. Yep. It makes this kind of thing always makes you wonder: would the story have been different had he stayed in the danger zone? You know, what could God have taught him over there? Would it have sped up the transition to him becoming king? You don't know. I don't know. Because even though he's out kind of in the wilderness experience here, he learned some stuff over here. He is going to end up leading men in what's the word? In attack mode over here, which is a skill set he's going to need later on. But he didn't have to get it this way.
He arguably already had that.
He's done it. He hasn't had to have his own territory to kind of steward, and because I don't know. I guess I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because that's what I do. But this is stupid, right? Can we agree this is stupid? It's poor choice.
He's depressed. He's been living even deeper in the wilderness now with his 2 wives, which I'm sure is just fun. They've been on a very long camping trip. Nobody's happy. He is despairing in his soul now. He is ready to go.
This reminded me of 2 very specific proverbs. Does it bring anything to mind for anybody? Any guesses?
Proverb.
Yep.
Interesting.
Anything have to do with the nagging wife?
No.
I think those apply now, though, that we brought this up, right?
It reminded me specifically of Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And it also reminded me of Proverbs 16:25, which says there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death.
So when
It's weird that would remind you of both.
I think you read it.
so Psalm 141 is related to this time period. Did you look at that?
I didn't
at all?
know that.
So it's typically associated with the beginning of this chapter, and it says, "Lord, I cry out to you. Make haste to me. Give ear to my voice when I cry out to you. Let my prayer be set before you as an incense, the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Do not incline my heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men who work iniquity, and do not let me eat of their delicacies. Let the righteous strike me, it shall be a kindness, and let him rebuke me, it shall be as excellent oil, and let my head not refuse it, for still my prayer is against the deeds of the wicked." And it's a relatively short one.
That doesn't sound like it's titled this time.
Their judges are overthrown by the sides of the cliff, and they hear my words, and they are sweet. This is not a happy one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, this doesn't end with, "Lord, you came and saved me." It goes on, "Our bones are scattered at the mouth of the grave, as when one plows and breaks up the earth. But my eyes are open upon you, O God the Lord. In you I take refuge. Do not leave my soul destitute. Keep me from the snares they have laid for me, and from the traps the workers of iniquity. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, while I escape safely."
I don't know. Like maybe at the end after he realizes he's wrong, but I don't understand how that ties.
It's
into
associated with the chapter. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no real definition. What's interesting, if you I always like to try to remove the chapter break period, and this reads as kind of, David went up into the wilderness, and the next day,
Yeah.
it's a problem.
Interpretation for our purposes, it is really easy to come up with pragmatic explanations and answers for our problems, even after God just did something amazing. Be on watch for that. God does not tire of us seeking His leadership in our life. It's not like He's like, "Man, could you just handle something?" No, He never says that. That's the flesh that says that. Figure it out. Do something. Save yourself. God never says that. It never goes well when His people do that. Because not only do you put yourself in a place that you can't bless, we're going to see that He protects David over here, like He did the first time. He protected David and Gath before. But I don't think there's any blessing for him here during this whole chapter, this whole time. This whole 16 months that he ends up spending in Gath. It's a time of activity, and he's busy, and he's growing in the esteem of the Philistines. But he's not being blessed at all, I don't think. Which makes it a wilderness experience. And that's where we end up when we make our own pragmatic decisions, dealing with problems. He's got 600 men and all their families with him when he goes to Gath. What's the importance of that for us?
Took everybody ahead?
Our poor decisions affect many more people than just us.
Because it's not just the 600.
Yeah, 600 and their families.
And their families,
Yeah.
and his wives.
Yeah.
He takes everybody.
Yeah. Whoever you have some extent of leadership over, when you make bad spiritual decisions, you're taking them with you. The impact is never just on you. So you got to be careful with that. Makes it even more important to seek the Lord's leading and direction, so that you don't end up in Gath.
No, effectively, he becomes downhearted. The enemy starts whispering in his ears, most likely. That's kind of my feeling here. And he allows the enemy to sour the reality of God around him.
Yeah.
And he can no longer see the truth and how it's working.
Yep. The time span of Achish as king, I don't think it's important, but it's interesting. Like he was king already. He's king now. He's the king when Solomon is king. Later on, like this dude had a long reign. Somebody reports the move to Saul, and he did stop chasing David. So the pragmatic side, at least to that extent, did come true. Saul did not chase him over there, which is what he was really after. But again, he just didn't do it the right way.
Saul's happy.
Yeah.
Not only David, but David's entire troop. I think he killed like 2,500 birds with one stone here.
Yeah. That's probably right, James.
Well, Saul's not chasing him because David's no longer in the perfect will of God.
Well, I mean, Saul's not chasing him because he's with the Philistines. And Saul doesn't want to mess with the Philistines if he didn't have to. He doesn't have a great history with them.
But had David stayed, Saul would still chase him, but he would have been he would have been more in God's grace.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. Eric?
I think it's refreshing to see that even David, who's a man after God's own heart, didn't make every step right all the time. And yet God stuck with him. I think it's a real watching of God's grace. This is even before, the cross.
Yeah.
Yet God still has that loyal love toward David, even though David was arguably in this passage not making good decisions.
Absolutely.
God doesn't abandon him.
Yeah, it's definitely an expression of grace and mercy that the Lord doesn't remove His anointing. This is almost a Saulish thing to do too.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, he's making Saulish decisions lately, but that difference being the nature of his heart. Whereas Saul's heart was not for God, we know that David's is.
We know he's going to come back. God knew he was going to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
So next legitimate section would be 5 through 7.
I think this is also a terrible testimony that David is setting up
Oh, no doubt.
all there. And Saul is given the nature, he probably feels like he won. Right? And what does that do for the rest of Israel?
Yeah.
Israel sees David leave. He chooses to leave the promised land of his own free will and join the enemy.
Yep.
What does that do to the rest of the nation? Who knew that he was king? Just hadn't happened yet.
Totally
We know that because of Nabal's wife, right?
Yeah.
So it's just horrible.
Yep. That's just more to the point of your bad spiritual decisions impact way more people than you. 5 through 7, then David said to Achish, if I have now found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country that I may dwell there, for why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? So Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. Now the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was 1 full year and 4 months. So he asks Achish for some place in the country. Achish gives him Ziklag, and it says it continued to belong to the kings of Judah perpetually. Here's something interesting. If you cross-reference Ziklag, you'll get a reference all the way back in Joshua that says Ziklag is named among the cities, quote, at the limits of the tribe of the children of Judah toward the border of Edom in the south. It had been part of Judah's inheritance, and they lost it. And God just took it back.
Wow.
See, this is the cool thing about God. The cool thing about God.
This is the one cool thing God's got going.
This is it. Write it down. Really, the point I'm going to make at the end, this is really kind of my theme. This is not David's story. This is not Achish's story. This is God's story. And though David is sideways, I think clearly outside of God's will, God is going to still even use that to accomplish His will in other areas. You know, there's always parallel storylines going on when it comes to spiritual things. And so David has wandered off the path, but God is still forcing the timeline to work in favor of the overall story of God is sovereign. And God said that land belonged to Israel. And they lost it, but He just took it back. I love that.
Did any of the other land he raided supposed to belong to Israel to begin with?
All of this land was supposed to belong to
Yeah,
Israel.
all this, the whole land of the Philistines.
Yeah.
should have.
But in that, it doesn't seem that he went and took that land. He just raided villages and killed people.
I
But
didn't
he's
know
not.
if it was close enough to the border if some of the Israelites might have moved in, at least temporarily.
Yeah, that I don't know. That I don't know.
Well, all
Yeah, I
of
don't
it's,
get that
all of
impression.
it's really close to Israel. I mean, Gath is only 24 miles away from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So all these places are right.
And so you go about 25 miles south of there, and that's Ziklag. You go another 25 miles or so southwest, and that's all these tribes that he wipes out. So it's really fairly close, close quarters. So yeah, it all should
You're
have
gonna
been.
tell these people that 50 miles is close?
Wait. After the drive we took Monday, yes, exactly what I'm going to say.
Well, you're going to tell the people in Judah who walked across the desert from
All the way around.
Egypt all the way over here
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
close. 100 miles is pretty close.
Well, the interesting part about that, this would have been the direct route to the Promised Land that they should have been able to
Should have
take,
been able
but
to.
he didn't lead them through there because of the Philistines that were already there in the first place. David stays there for 16 months. This is a long time to live in a self-prescribed servitude to somebody you know is an enemy of God. That's the heartbreaking point of the story for me. We had this conversation today, and I'm trying to give David the benefit of the doubt. I really am. You know, if you want to paint a pretty picture, you can say, well, he went over there to be a double agent. And to wipe out some Philistines while being supported by Philistines, and that'd make a great movie. But there's no verbiage that supports that. There's no evidence that God led him there. But we do have instances of him professing to be the servant of Achish. And that's rough, man. That's rough. We're having this conversation today, and I didn't really yield while we were talking. And
I was kind of hard on you about it.
and a few minutes later, like that word servant is what stuck out to me. Because the dissonance between that and David looking at a giant and saying, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? You know, like he hated that guy because that guy hated God. And now he's willing to live under the protection of the very same kind of guy and call him master. That's hard to take. That's really hard to take. He stays there for 16 months. So there's another problem with making your own decision instead of letting God lead. See also Lot with Sodom and Gomorrah. You can end up in the wrong place and get comfortable and just stay there.
See, I'm also wondering about the feasts and all that stuff. This is probably completely off.
Absolutely. I bet.
Which means everybody with him, too.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a horror show, man.
You know, before, even just the chapter before, he's bemoaning the fact that he cannot go to the temple,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And now he's leaving it all together.
Yeah. And he was actually seeking provisions to be able to have his feast. That's how he ended up with this other wife. Right? No mention of that now. Verses 8 and 9. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the land of Egypt. Whenever David attacked the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camels, the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. What do we know about these folks that he's attacking?
They're part of the ites.
Fascinating.
That's what I actually refer to him as. He goes off and attacks ites.
Taxites? We don't know really anything about the Gerzites. There's actually some debate as to who they actually are, but the Amalekites should have been wiped out by Saul. Remember the story where he was told to wipe out everybody, even the animals, and he kept the king and the choice sheep. That was the Amalekites that he was supposed to wipe out. And so here they are. Somebody else is having to deal with it. David doesn't wipe them out. We know that they last all the way until the Esther story. The Geshurites, they were supposed to have been wiped out by Manasseh, but weren't. Cross-reference there to Joshua 13:13. Nevertheless, the children of Israel did not drive out the Geshurites or the Maacathites, or however you say that, but the Geshurites and the Maacathites dwell among the Israelites until this day. What's the lesson there?
When God tells you to wipe something out, wipe it out.
Thank you. What's he going to tell us to wipe out? Sin. Unrighteousness. Not taking up your cross and following him. He's going to tell us to wipe that out of our lives. And if we leave even one little bit of it there, it will keep growing and keep growing and keep growing, and it'll be a problem perpetually. And again, other people are going to have to deal with it.
Do you spend any time looking at the nature of what he's doing over there?
What do you mean?
So the word that they use for raid here is
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Does
anybody else know what he's talking about? Okay.
All right. So the word that they use for raid is not a word that's commonly used, especially when the children of Israel act. Okay. It's primarily referred to as the stripping. Okay. So effectively, one common use of this word would be when the brothers tear off Joseph's coat of many colors. The exact same word is used there. It's also a word that's commonly applied to the work of the Philistines. They show up, they basically strip everything away and completely annihilate everything and go away. It is pretty much not in the nature of how God guides them to do the warfare. God never uses this term for really anything he tells them to do. So when he tells them to go in and wipe out the ites, he doesn't even use this terminology. But every action that the Philistines take when they're raiding, this is the wording that's used.
Very uncomfortable with everything David is doing here. Again, God's storyline, though. Those people were supposed to be wiped out. They were already supposed to have been wiped out. So even in sin, David is serving the Lord, even though he's not even trying to. But there's no blessing in it for him because he's doing it wrong.
It's being
So-
so very manipulative and not showing God's light at all.
Yeah. He's not doing this for God. He's not proclaiming it. He's not, after a victory, he's not sitting on an altar and praising God. He's acting like just a mercenary.
The pirates.
Yeah.
They're like land pirates.
Yeah, very much like a pirate.
Mm-hmm. They're swooping in, killing all the people, taking everything of value. leaving.
Yep. If instructed by God to do what he's doing, great. If seeking to overthrow the enemies of God, okay. If this is your plan for providing for your own needs, then it doesn't matter whether the victims of your wrath are God's enemies or not, you're committing sin.
I think part of the real indicator too is why is he killing the men and the women?
It tells us later.
Yeah, tells us exactly why he's doing it. So what?
From tell on them.
Yeah, so they don't give light to his lie.
Yeah.
which is the first thing tells me this is all bad stuff.
Which should have kept him from doing what he did with Bathsheba and her husband. It's an interesting parallel. A lie begets a lie begets a lie. And before you know it, you're in deep.
He literally gets into it deeper.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, he gets into it deep, but not really to where he learns anything, because he still gets out of it.
It's interesting the position he puts himself in. This is where, you know, and obviously I'm jumping way ahead, we'll talk about this later. But he, because of the lie details, which is the next thing we'll talk about, he's claiming to be willing to attack his own people, which gets him further esteem with his Philistine master, which sets him up for having to fight his own people for him. Like, he really puts himself in a bad position. And it's God who has to protect him from that by not allowing the other Philistines to trust him enough to do it. If not for that, he would have had to go to battle with somebody when it came time to fight Israel. And that's what lying does. That's what being outside of God's will and forging your own path does. It just leads to darker and darker into the woods. It's like that trip I took in the truck when I was still out on the road years ago. You know, I had this auto parts run that ran from East Tennessee to Michigan 3 times a week. And so some of those times I had to drive a little bit when I shouldn't be driving according to the legal rules of the country, which I got over, but back then I was still willing to be stupid. And so I had to drive, we call it driving through the woods. When you got to get off the interstate and go up the little roads, you know, there's not many way stations or anything, right? So I'm driving through the woods. And there was a spot on the state route over in East Tennessee where you were in this little town, and the state road took a 90-degree turn to the left. Well, one night I'm going through there about 3 in the morning, and I missed the sign, and I just kept going straight. So I'm heading the wrong way, but I don't know it. And so I get about 5 minutes in, and the road's starting to get a little narrow. I was like, I don't remember this. I've been through here 100 times. I don't remember this. And it keeps getting more and more narrow. And before long, it's one lane.
Oh.
And I knew I was in trouble.
There's no place to turn around there.
Truck with a 53-foot trailer on a one-lane country road
No.
in the middle of the night is not a recipe for success. And that's what this is. David set off on the wrong route, and the way just keeps getting there. He's getting boxed in. And he's going to reach a point where he's in trouble. And it seems like he has no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that bothers me too. At no point in this process, well, let's read the lie. 10 and 11. Then Achish would say, where have you made a raid today? And David would say, against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenites. David would say, neither man nor woman alive to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they should inform on us, saying, thus David did, and thus was his behavior all the time he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. So it bothers me that he didn't even have the conscience after the first time he told the lie to realize, man, what am I doing? This is not me. This is not who I am. I don't know what's going to happen if I go back where Saul's at, but that's where I'm supposed to be. He should have gone back. But the longer he stays, the easier it is to stay and do the wrong thing. And that's the story of our lives.
Then nobody else around him said anything either. Like, God didn't put it on any one of their hearts to say, hey,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be here. Because, you know, just a chapter before, Abigail was, you know,
That's a good point. I hadn't
being
thought
all,
about that.
you know, she was saving her husband and saving him at the same time.
Yeah. Sometimes if you keep asking for a rope, God will give you the rope to hang yourself.
And in that case, I mean, she was even defining for David what the promise of the Lord was then.
Yeah.
In that. Yeah. And where is she in this?
Exactly.
You know, and he's got all these men, right, that he's been training up, and arguably training in the ways of the Lord and stuff. And now he's got them way off the path and out just annihilating villages and stuff.
Yeah.
And really, again, the nature of this testimony is just horrific. I bet the ripple effect of this down the road, things that we have no knowledge about, obviously, but I bet this has a negative impact for generations.
Yeah. To your point, just the impact of the testimony in front of lost people
Yeah.
is astounding.
Yeah. Look at the Philistines, the testimony before the Philistines.
Yes, I mean.
They're like, "Whoo, yeah! This is that." I mean, Achish recognized David as the man last time, right? Killer of tens of thousands, as opposed to Saul's thousands. And here he knows that. That's part of why. And he's, hey, you know, David's managed to keep alive this whole time, and he's doing things. He's now he's got this whole group of guys, and he's walking around with, you know, easily over 2,000 people now, and everything that supports that. And
he wants to serve me.
Here he wants to serve me against his own people, for which, and you, Achish, for all intents and purposes, we know Achish is not stupid. He's heard the story about David too. He hears the scuffle about who David is supposed to be as the king of Israel, and here he has the king of Israel coming to him to slaughter his own people effectively.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. What possibly go wrong?
And in that case, we have to be very careful in how we communicate our intent to people. It is the means that are more important than the ends in pretty much all cases.
Yeah. Yeah. So again,
We are supposed to be different.
we have the parallel reality going on here in the nuts and bolts of it, as God is using him as a double agent to wipe out some people that need to be wiped out. He's actually killing Achish's allies, which are God's enemies, but he lies about it, which allows him to continue to have the opportunity to keep doing it. So from eternal perspective, God's getting quite a bit done through off-track David here. But again, as a free agent, from David's perspective, making his own decisions, this is just a pitiful scheme to use the world's methods to meet his needs instead of crying out to the Lord. And that is something every single one of you is tempted to do on a regular basis. You can have it. Just do it our way. Just do it our way. It's way easier. Way less pressure. Here, we'll help you. We'll set you up. We'll give you a city to work out of.
It's the same temptation he's been resisting the whole time.
That's right. That's exactly right. Application for us, we must remember that the ends never justify the means. Sin doesn't defeat sin or bring a blessing, even if it provides the desired short-term effect that we set out to gain. And start in verse 12 and go on through 2:28. So Achish believed David, saying, "He has made his people Israel utterly abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever." Now it happened in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies together for war to fight with Israel. And Achish said to David, "You assuredly know that you will go out with me to battle, you and your men." So David said to Achish, "Surely you know what your servant can do." And Achish said to David, "Therefore I will make you one of my chief guardians forever." Man. This is the anointed king of Israel going to his master, one of the Philistine kings, and saying, "You know what I can do." And the Philistine king loves him for it, right?
I envisioned Achish, having a painting commission and hanging it up in the Hall of Heroes of the Philistines. Anointed king of Israel.
Warrior of the month.
Man, this guy's great. Where has he been? Why did we throw this madman out last time?
He was sideways with that statement too, though, because it wasn't him that did it.
Mhm.
He didn't give God any of that credit either.
God's not mentioned anywhere.
Mhm.
Anywhere. Why is Achish just not stupid? But it's kind of stupid to so easily believe that this is what's really going on. I mean, he sees evidence in the pirated booty that David brings to him, but he just takes David's story at face value of where he raided. He obviously doesn't double check on it, or we would have seen it was a lie. And so he falls into the trap. If David had been there as a double agent on purpose, it would have been easy to take Achish down. And Achish was a big deal. Why? What would make him so easily manipulated like that?
Well, when he was a madman, he lost all of his senses, and now he's after his own people.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. James?
I think it's more along the lines of pride. Achish, you know, I'm sure David came to him on bended knee saying,
Probably.
look what I can do, and Achish, you know, he got a big head, and he was like, well, you know, yes,
Yeah.
I'll go for that, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt either one of those. It still doesn't really make any sense. I mean, this should be a trust but verify situation. And he's obviously not verifying anything. These are easy stories to debunk. Yeah?
Wouldn't you think the Philistine clothes would be different than the Israelite clothes?
I did wonder about this.
Yeah.
Because yeah, he shows up with all the articles of clothing and stuff.
And they're not Israelite
Yeah.
clothes.
And I'm
they're-
thinking, well, he obviously also didn't set fire to anything. 'Cause,
Yeah.
oh, what's that over there?
I actually hadn't thought about that, but that's a pretty good point.
Yeah. So, and I was also thinking that they obviously didn't have this issue with branding their animals or anything because nobody bothered. To
I was
check the
wondering,
brand.
yeah, right.
They hadn't been to Texas, so.
Here's what I think. The inherently evil are easily convinced that others are inherently evil,
Yeah.
and therefore somehow trustworthy.
It seemed reasonable to him that he would betray his people.
Yeah.
I mean, classic Philistines, right?
Yeah. It's an odd system of belief, but it's kind of prevalent in the world. You know, honor among thieves, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Philistines gathered their armies together to go to war against Israel. This was bound to happen at some point. David should have known that this day was coming.
And David's arguably running a pretty significant PR campaign.
What do you mean?
I mean, so David is so present that he knows he can't let anybody live. Okay? So without a doubt, he's got other people whispering, you know, and planting seed of this PR campaign about how he's doing awesome work for the Philistines, and not about where they're going. Because we know even these 600 guys and their women and all that, nobody's talking at all.
I wonder why.
I mean, if you've got a whole town, a stranger comes through, you know it's a stranger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna-
Very odd.
So, and arguably, you can say that it's the fog of God upon the Philistines here that allows this to take place. Or arguably, somebody would have tried to, take David out by this point.
Yep. You have to cringe when Achish says, you know you're going to fight with me against your people. And David says, yeah, I can do that. You know what I can do. Man. Listen, the farther away from God you get, you would not believe some of the things you're capable of. Don't play around with that. 2 steps in the wrong direction leads to 4, to 8, to 16, to 32. And everything is different over there. You go hang out with the sinners and live their lifestyle for 16 months and see what you're capable of.
Not that it's a big difference, but I always read, you shall know what your servant can do is like, you're now going to get to see me in action. That's
Yeah, and there is a lot of times when people do the double agent argument about this chapter, that's one of the key phrases. They take that as kind of a double entendre type thing, that it's a double speak form. And he's going to say, well, now you'll see what I'll actually do in that case. It is interesting in that. And I can see where people really want to cling to that. And like we had talked this morning, if it's not for like that first section where it's really talking about how David has lost his heart and is no longer put his eyes on God, if it's not for that first section, then the rest of this really does kind of lend itself to the double agent construct.
I'm not necessarily
Other than
thinking,
the lie.
I'm not necessarily thinking he was being a double agent so much as it's David and his men who've been going out. If there had been any Philistines with him, they'd know they weren't raiding
Oh,
the
they hadn't
Israelite
seen what
town.
they'd actually done.
So that he didn't actually get to see David in action. He only got to see the spoil. It's like now you're gonna
Now you get to see what we
now
can
you're
do.
gonna see that
What is the,
It's boastful.
what's the,
well it's.
what's the
I
big
mean, what you're
one
going to do when
for-
you're in front of the king and he's saying you're coming with me, you're going to say, nah.
Yes.
I'm not going to say that.
Well, that's the other thing. Achish is not like, hey, you're going with me right now. He's like, you're going with me,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, you've been doing your own thing. Let's make no mistake. You serve me.
Yeah. And it's interesting in that is I kind of take that almost as
Keep your friends
he's
close, keep your enemies close.
calling David's bluff in that too. He's saying, hey, you don't come with me,
Yeah.
and we're going to make sure you are who you say you are.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure Achish is not personally worried about these 600 people.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Achish might have had long-term plans of, okay, David's supposed to be the next king, maybe I'll get Israel through David down the
Yeah.
road?
King in my pocket type of thing. Possibly. I mean, arguably,
David
that's
is a
what it
vassal
feels
king.
like to him. Yeah.
David is vassal king.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting parallel here to the temptation of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can be king. Just submit to me.
Yep.
I'll give you all of that. You're having trouble with Saul over there, becoming king over there? I got you. Here's a city. Go out and do your own raids. Serve me. Go to war with me. And you can have everything that you want.
We'll put an army behind you that can help with those 3,000 people Saul seems to always
Yeah.
haul around.
We'll end up with this. What if there's an application for us in regards to being careful about who we follow? What is it? Because I think a lot about these 600 guys
Mm-hmm.
and their families and the peril that David puts them in.
Well, you start following the wrong person, God will blind you to the truth and just give you that kind
Sometimes, yeah.
Well,
of
arguably, they started
days
following
that you're
the
going the right direction, because you'll.
Here's what I got. Don't be esteemers of men because of what they did yesterday. Don't blindly follow anybody, because there are plenty of legit spiritual leaders in our culture that did the right thing yesterday. And so people just followed them, and now they're out in the weeds. Case by case, day by day, nobody is above temptation. David has seen miracle after miracle after miracle, proving that he is the anointed, that he will not be killed. That everybody keeps telling him. Saul told him, "You will surely be king one day."
Mm-hmm.
And his next thought was, "Uh-oh, I better save myself from Saul." Be careful who you follow. Make sure they're headed the right direction. And I mean that of me and anybody else. There is nobody in the world above temptation. So everybody needs to be paying attention. Amen?
And say something.
And say something.
When it comes up, say something.
Yeah.
What would have happened if his top 3 guys, because we know there's 3 really important guys to him in this, what happens if those top 3 guys say, hey, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Because there's the other thing.
These are not our people.
Look how he responded to Abigail when she came. And
Yeah. It's like, oh, thank you.
yeah.
I
And
didn't
when he
realize
responded to
that.
Nathan,
Yeah.
and he
It is interesting here that she's referred to as the widow of Nabal.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
That further tells me she's poking on him too.
Uh-huh.
What are you doing out there in the woods? I had a nice kitchen back home. 600 loaves of bread every day.
Praise that, Mike.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessing today again to just come together and chew over your word, Lord, and just swallow this information that you've laid before us, Lord. Just allow us to use this knowledge in lighting our path before us, Lord, to look at those that you put us under, Lord, and help give light to whether or not they're continuing down your path, Lord. Such that, not even to condemn them or anything, or part ways, but to help guide them in that, Lord. To say, hey, my brother, we're my sister, what's happening? Why are we clearly leaving the grace of the Lord and going to the land of the Philistines so that we can act like them? Mm-hmm. Lord, allow us to be strong in our faith, Lord. Allow us to continually not listen to our deceitful flesh, to the lies of the heart, and become bogged down in the emotion that can take over the flesh, Lord, but to keep our eyes on the cross, to continually keep our eyes on Christ and double check everything. Mm-hmm. Pray incessantly. Lord, thank you for your grace and your mercy and the image of that in this, Lord. Thank you for like David, you don't crush us because we got silly and made a stupid choice, Lord. Mm. And thank you for giving us the inspiration of leaders around us and the support of our brothers and sisters and the assurity in our hope of eternal salvation, that we can turn and come back, and by the mercy and the grace of God be one in the kingdom again. Lord, guide us and protect us as we go into the prayer time now, and allow us to be your hands and feet, Lord, as this world around us continually crumbles. Lord, I pray that we can somehow, through your glory, the gospel and salvation, Lord, be the glue that puts a few people back together. Guide us and protect us, and allow us to be the purveyors of your mercy. Most holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Lord willing, next chapter 28 next week. If you have the link for the Zoom prayer meeting, please jump on there right now. It will start immediately. If not, we will see you Sunday. Until then,
love God, love everybody else.
Amen.